to the Electoral Area Services Committee of Wednesday, November 3rd. And we do have a confirmation of quorum, so I will call the meeting to order.
Move adoption of public agenda with the addition of the Quadra Sustainability Plan under the addendum.
Second.
Okay, any comment on that? Anyone opposed? Moving on, petitions and delegations. Don't have any. Previous minutes adoption. Any?
Move adoption.
Second.
Okay, anything we added or subtracted or whatever? Okay, anyone opposed? Carried. Business arising. Anything arising from the minutes? I actually had the one item.
The sustainability plan, which is now in the addenda.
Right. Oh, come on back. I just lost my agenda. Sorry, just give me one sec here. Using two computers here, and it's sometimes confusing. Okay, so moving on to staff reports. We have we have the chair's report, nothing. Staff reports, item 1, Area Day Universal Water Meter Project Grant Opportunity.
Move receipt of report.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Dave, anything you want to say to that?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I believe Wolf will speak to this.
Yeah, good morning to the
Morning,
CEO.
Wolf.
Good morning to the CEO and the chair to the committee. This is a report to consider submitting an application to the Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program under the Green Infrastructure Environmental Quality Stream and Substream that got released early in October this year. Just a reminder about what we did in the past. In August 2019, we received a letter where the application that we put the universal water meters was not successful, so we're trying again this year. After the announcement was made, we have a complete feasibility study developed with costing estimated at $2.5 million with a cost share. These are the financial implications. So the province and the government of Canada will fund up to 73%, and the remaining of 26.6 will be the responsibility of the regional district. The commitment between the province and the government of Canada to fund this kind of projects for this third intake is $270 million, and that includes projects that will improve water systems and also as well wastewater treatment systems. This is linked to the second report that is coming up. Our recommendation to the committee is to put an application or to submit an application to investing in Canada infrastructure project. And this is related to the northern area, the water services, and the deadline is January 26. We're planning to submit this application, if this gets approved today, by the first week of December 2021. Also, we're recommending that the committee approve the share of any eligible costs or cost overruns associated with the project. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Wolf. I have a question. You mentioned the percentages to be paid. It seemed to me that from FCM and UBCM, we went through this cost sharing percentage divvying up some time ago, a couple of years ago, actually, at the FCM meeting, and the percentages were, I don't remember the exact numbers, but it was majority federal, a big chunk was provincial, and ours, what we fought for was 13%. Is that not happening?
Yeah, so yeah, thank you, Director Abraham. So here are the percentages that they're committing to this program this year or for this third intake. 40% from the government of Canada, 33.33 the province of British Columbia, and 26.67 would be the commitment from our regional district.
Okay, well, thank you. I guess that's somehow been changed in the last couple of years.
So I have a
know we
question,
did get
Mr.
it.
Chair, I have a
Okay, go ahead.
question. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Mike, can you hear me? My question
Oh.
is through the chair to Wolfgang. Or the CAO, whoever can answer this. The $667,000 that Area D would be guaranteeing at a minimum if we got this grant, where could that money come from? Could it come out of our gas tax funds or out of reserves or out of, where would that money come from?
So, Mr. Chair, I think I can answer that. So we'll have to, excuse me, look at some of the details of the program. So Wolf just said 40% federally. Gas tax is a federal contribution, and the programs often have a limit on how much federal contribution. It's likely higher than 40, so I'm going to say I believe a little bit could come out of gas tax, possibly. You could take money out of reserve. You could short-term borrow the funds, and you could take it out of requisition. So there's a number of things you could use the money, and I think we would first look into see if there's the ability to apply some additional gas tax funding to that.
That would be useful to
Okay,
know.
Yeah.
I'm not bulking at paying our share of whatever we have to pay to get this off the ground. The current system, as everyone knows, is really unsatisfactory to charge people for water on their taxes partially based on their assessed value of your property. I mean, nobody that pays utilities in BC pays based on the assessed value of their home. And it results in a terribly inequitable situation for a lot of people. So we need to put these meters on so that we can actually just account for exactly what people are using, and then they can pay for that amount.
Okay, thank you, Brenda. Dave, it was my understanding from previous grant applications that we could not use gas tax if other federal money was being granted. We couldn't combine the two, but now I'm hearing that there's actually we might be able to throw in 10% from gas tax or something like that. Is that correct?
All the programs are a little different, so they'll put a cap on how much federal contribution can be made. So let's just say we look at the details of the program and it says a 50% federal contribution maximum. Therefore, we might be able to sneak in an extra 10 in gas tax. So we'll have to see what that max federal contribution is. If they say it's 40%, then obviously we can't complement it with any of our gas tax money.
Okay, thank you for
Each program is different, though.
Okay, I was under the impression that they were universal in their intransigence about funding things. If they gave you some money, then that's all you're going to get. That's good to hear that we might possibly be able to use some gas tax. Okay, so anything further on the CAO's report?
I wouldn't want this to obstruct the motion that we do after receipt, but I would like a report back from the CAO on the results of his investigations into how we're going to finance the $667,000 from Area D.
I'm sure we'll get that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Chair.
Yes.
Thanks. I clearly want to support this as well as the next item. My question is at a higher level about prioritization of these things. I know that there's been on the work plan for many years now, a sort of a septic processing feasibility assessment that hasn't come to light. And I'm just wondering if that's on staff's radar when these kinds of funding programs come available. I know this one is probably for actual built infrastructure, was what we're not looking for, but I've been told that there, for a few years now, that there are funds available for these kinds of studies. I'm just wondering if where we're at with that, and I'm happy to take that into another conversation. There's just never really a moment.
Again, this is for a grant program for sewer and water that I would characterize as you're only going to be successful if you have funded a study with hard costs associated with it. Director Lee knows when we weren't successful with first Area D, it's because we didn't have a study saying exactly what it was. If there's interest in Area B for septic disposal, certainly we would have to fund a proper study to do that. And again, that could be brought up at the one-on-ones next year if that's a study you want funded, so you have an opportunity to apply for a program should it meet the requirements.
Well, that is exactly the case, and that has been on the work plan for some years and has been brought up at one-on-ones consistently. And I've been told that there are funds available to match the funds we have set aside to do an initial study, and I just never hear anything. So I know that we're not in a position to apply for these kinds of funds because we're not doing that initial work, and it's just frustrating.
Okay, well, perhaps you could bring that up then once again at your one-on-one, and if you need other meetings with staff, you could take it up there, because it's not really connected to this particular project, particular.
I do understand, and I get one chance a year to speak to it.
Mr. Chair, I'd
Okay,
ask for
well,
a
staff,
question on receipt.
Okay, question on receipt of the CAO's report. Anyone opposed? It's carried on.
Move the recommendation.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Any comments?
Yeah, one more comment. When this goes to the board, I would encourage everyone to vote enthusiastically in favor of this, because it's our second attempt, and the minister has more or less indicated that we are going to be given some priority in consideration this time due to some other issues that got resolved in the summer regarding our dispute over Black Creek Oyster Bay third
Okay, let's not
well
go off
stuff.
topic.
Yeah, but we
But we
did
don't-
get a letter from her saying that, put the grant application in again. High probability you're going to be successful.
Okay, we're doing that, and I can't imagine the board having had as many conversations as they've had on this Northern Area D water service area, that they would want to do anything but dispose of it. So I would think you're in good shape.
Or support Area D would be a better way to put it. To support
No,
us for once.
Dispose of the issue is
Yeah,
jargon for.
support Area D is a good jargon too.
Okay, let's support Area D in the green infrastructure grant program for Area D water meters. Anyone opposed to item B? Okay, that's carried. Okay, item 2, Quadra Island Infrastructure Projects Grant Opportunity.
Move
Report
receipt.
from the CAO
Second,
and Dave or Wolf.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I think Wolf will speak to this one as well.
Yeah, thank you again through the CAO and the chair to the committee. This second report is related to a grant opportunity as well using the ICPP program released a few weeks ago. This is more specific to Area C. Area C has got 2 projects that are eligible to grant opportunities that we have. We had looked at these 2 projects. The first one is the Kwatielski Cove wastewater treatment plant replacement. The second project is the Kwatielski Cove community water distribution system. So for these 2 projects, we have feasibility studies completed. For the first one, we completed a study back in 2020 when we put an application, and we were informed by the province that we were not successful. So this will be our second attempt to get funding to replace major components of the treatment plant, which is already past the life expectancy. A lot of these elements that are giving us a lot of hard time these days with repairs. And there are different factors that we have to consider, and we have to think strategically about how are we going to recommend an application for these two projects. So the first one, we already have a complete study developed with a class estimate that is pretty much ready to be designed and built, which is something that they're looking for. With the water distribution system, we're lacking of additional information that is required to complete the study. And this is related to drilling that will let us know about the quality of the water and the quantity of the water as well. So this has been discussed and introduced to this committee and the board in the past. And we have concerns that not having that information available and not having a detailed cost estimate class A or B available will not allow us to succeed with the application of this grant. We also have look at the timelines that the program is asking us for. They want us to start this project construction in 2023, and the project has to be built in 2026, which is something that will benefit the replacement of the waste water treatment plant. It will be pretty difficult to have a project design and build or construction starting 2023 for the water distribution system. And we also don't have a service area established yet for the water distribution. So in terms of the financial and implication options, I'm just going to speak about both projects. For the QCOV, the total cost that has been estimated by the prime consultant we engage is for the first option is, yes, it's 3.1 million. Again, applying the same percentages of 40% the government and 23% the province, 26 by SRD. The approximately amount that we have to share is $825,000. I'm pretty sure the same question will come up, where are we going to get these funds from? So we can discuss this in a moment. And for the Kwatioski Cove Community Water System, the total estimated cost that we have, excluding all the exploratory drilling that is required, is $10.2 million plus taxes. And the share cost is approximately $2.7 million. So those are the two projects. We're based on the study and that we did and analyzing all the program criteria. We're recommending the committee to please allow us to put an application to submit to the Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program for the Kwatioski Cove Wastewater Treatment Facility plant, and also to have the regional district to commit to its share of any ineligible costs or cost overruns associated with the project. Thank you.
Thank you, Wolf. If I may, as the director for the area, first I'd like to ask you, you talked about, I think you used two terms. One was replacement, one was repair. Is this application for the Kwatioski Cove sewer plant, is this for a new plant?
That is correct. All the major components of the plant will be new.
Okay, that's what I wanted to hear. Okay, because we have been nickel and diming, that plant has been nickel and diming us to death for 10 years. And it just needs to be replaced. It was 40 years old when we bought it. Okay, so that's that. The other part is the water study, which of course, you know, many people are extremely enthusiastic about the fact that we have done, I believe it's a Class D or Class C water study estimate for the water system for line water. And then we still have to do further investigation for drilling and quantity and quality. We're already at 10. We're probably going to be at, 12, 15 million. for that project, and this one, we're talking 3 or something. I think that of the two, the one being the sewer, if it goes down, I have no idea what we would even do. If we did
Pump and
not have a
haul.
sewer, pardon?
Pump and haul.
Okay, so that would be sort of a daily process, I would think,
Yep,
which would be
yep.
extremely expensive.
Yep.
And that would fall directly on the users
Mhm.
of the service. Is that correct? In the service
Yep.
area?
Yep.
Okay, so that seems to be like a non-starter to pass that one up. The other one is basically to allow us to move on with our local area plan process, which encouraged densification of Kwathiaski Cove. And we've run into a brick wall with Island Health on the densification issue because they do not want to do individual wells and they do not want to do individual water systems. So they've sort of forced us into looking at this larger water system, which is a great idea, but can a defined area, which would most likely be the users of that water system, can they afford to put this forward at the construction stage and at the annual operating cost stage, in addition to their annual operating costs for sewer? So I think that staff are making a wise choice here, although it's, certainly going to frustrate a number of people about the water system being put off once again. But I really don't see any option. I don't believe that we can afford as an island, no matter where you draw that line, I don't believe we can afford it. And at this particular time, with more grants, with more time, with a better study, with a better Class A or B estimate, we could probably make a better decision. So with the decision that we have, or with the information that we have right now, I think you've made a good choice to go with the green infrastructure for a sewer system, which is just an absolute necessity, since we already have all of these, forget what it is, 150 possibly homes hooked up to the sewer. They have got to have that service. There's no two ways about it. So I appreciate the fact that you put this much work into it, and I appreciate the fact that you're putting the application for the grant forward, and I hope that it will be successful. And I do want to say, just in case there's some misconception here by other directors, Brenda, you in particular, this is not a competition with Area D. We're allowed one project per area. So your area is very definitely, in my mind, top of the line. And number two, the one from my area is very definitely top of the line, but they're not competing with each other. They're both going forward. And I appreciate the work that staff has done to make this happen on such short notice. This just came out, as I recall, like a week ago or 2 weeks ago, that they announced the third uptake, or second uptake, or whatever it is. So anyway, I hope you all support it, and shut up now. So has it been moved?
Mr. Chairman,
We're
there's
still
a
on
motion on
receipt.
receipt on the floor, but has yet to be voted on.
Yep, on receipt. Is there anyone opposed? Seeing none, it's passed. Item B, I would hope somebody would move for me.
Move the
Item B.
recommendation. Move.
Okay, moved and seconded. Brenda, Gerald.
Yeah.
Is there
And
any discussion?
Yes, I don't feel that you're competing with me. We've got two entirely different projects in two entirely different stages. And if the Kwathiaski Cove sewer plant fails, Ministry of Environment could hold the regional district liable for like $1 million per day fines. We saw that happen in Seashelt when their sewage system failed and they were fined, and we don't want to go there. And we know the plant was bought used and that it's, served the area for the past 20 years, and time to all machines wear out eventually. So we have to plan for asset replacement along the lines. And I do support the project, even
Thank you very
though,
much.
it has nothing to do with the area dewater metering project.
Okay, thank you, Brenda. Any further comments or discussion on item B? I see none. Anyone opposed? So that carries. Thank you very much, committee. Okay, item 3, preliminary surplus report,
Move receipt.
electoral area services.
Second.
Okay, on receipt. Dave, would you like to?
Sure,
speak to
thank you,
this?
Mr. Chair. So according to the budget calendar here, what our intent is to, Mike is going to present a high-level surplus report just to kind of give a high-level report on all the services and kind of their health in terms of projecting surpluses. Last year, we generated, as a result of COVID and the shutdown of a lot of activities and operations and hiring and so on and so forth, we generated quite healthy surpluses that we tried to redistribute through the other services to provide as much financial assistance to folks as we could. So again, we've had another COVID year, not like last year, but as we promised the committee, Mike will present. It's just to give you kind of a high level feeling of the health of each of the services in terms of how their surpluses are doing. Surpluses are a good indication of, if they're going down, we're probably overspending our lines, and if they're going up, they're underspending. Now, keeping that in mind, 2020 surpluses were unusually high because the spending was down. So, having said that, I will pass it over to Mike, and I think he may have a PowerPoint here.
Oh,
Okay,
no,
welcome, Mike.
You don't,
Okay,
or no?
thank
Okay.
you. No PowerPoint. I was just going to leave the report. But yeah, as Dave mentions, this is kind of one of our first steps in the budget cycle. We're just looking at the current year results and where they, and we try and make estimates today of where they're going to come out at by the end of the year. It's, as Dave says, it's not so much the total amount of the surplus or the deficit, but it's rather the change from the previous year that we really have to understand to on our end. We added another bar to the surplus charts this year just to look at the past 5-year history and kind of put more context on the surplus we're expecting today. In general, the biggest changes we're seeing is any of the departments that have a lot of humans. So anything with recreation or planning, which is one of the bigger departments. Recreation, of course, was slowed with the effects of COVID, and then planning with the difficulties with retention and staff recruitment. That kind of deferred some of the projects. We placed some summary notes beside each of the services just to provide some general insight on where everything looks like it's going to fall. All these reports kind of lay the groundwork for the upcoming budget discussions. So if anyone has any questions stemming from today's meetings and we don't have the answer, we could have another chance to get them addressed on the 10th. So if anyone has any question, please let us know.
So, Mr. Chair, if I can as well, give a little bit of context here. We have on our schedule the one-on-one meetings, and again, part of what we're trying to provide for you is to give you a high-level health of each service. So, if you're thinking of things that you want to bring up or add, subtract from your services, this gives you the ability to see how those individuals are doing. The other thing with regional districts is, Yes, we all know we have to balance a budget, but that means balancing every single service budget. And so with regional districts, you don't have one gigantic surplus for the whole budget, and you can project one and bring a budget forward prior to the end of the year. So there isn't really much tangibly we can do in the current year budget-wise, but get input and feedback from directors, kind of give them high-level health reports on the service, take that and put it into the budget. So again, these are just projections to give you some insight into some of the things you may be thinking in terms of speaking to the one-on-one. And even when we're going to speak to the next report of business case, it kind of gives you look at 500 planning and what's the health of that service and what the impact of adding a position may be. So having said that, happy to answer any questions.
Okay, if I could, just one comment for clarity. The three colored bars, median, actual, projected. The projected line pretty much always being less than the actual. I assume that's to finish out the year.
Well, no, it's
looking at that?
It's a projected number of what we believe the surplus will be. And the reason Mike put the context of an average year is it's not really fair to look at the 2020 surpluses because in every local government, they were high. So the projected surpluses and the real surpluses for 2021 are always going to be less because that was such an anomaly. So what Mike's tried to do is say, okay, in an average year, if we take out COVID, this is what a surplus generally would be, or what we have had in the past. Now, what we tried to do again to provide some context to here is when we had those large surpluses last year, we tried to ease the financial burden on the taxpayer and redistribute requisition where we could. So in a service that was shared by everything, if one was having a very healthy surplus, we tried to find ways to ease the burden on other services that are shared by the same taxpaying group. So again, when you look at the 2020, it's going to be high because it was shut down, it was COVID, and measure it really our current surplus to what an average year would be. But that's what the number that we've got projected is what we anticipate. Obviously, it won't be exactly that number, but projecting forward on our expenses the time of year, that's what we think the number will come in at.
Okay, but would it not be true to say that your surpluses get carried forward to the next year?
They do.
Is that not what happens?
They do get carried forward. And so a measure of their health is, did the surplus grow, decline, or stay the same in each service? If you maintain a surplus, then the kind of health is good. You can underspend, which we clearly did last year, and so that it's a good measuring tool to look at spending. Now, again, COVID puts a big asterisk into what normal would be, but we tried to provide some perspective on that.
Okay, so Nova, you have your hand up? Mike, did you want to speak first?
Oh, I was just going to mention too that yeah, Dave is absolutely correct. I'd also point out that the both the green and the light blue bar are actual amounts, whereas the dark blue bar is more of an estimate. So we tend to be more kind of conservative. So that would be another reason why you would see lower bars, just because of the just inherently by the nature we try and make a nice conservative estimate of where we're at. So thanks.
Better safe than sorry.
Yeah, correct.
Okay, Nova.
Thanks. A couple of things. The questions around the surplus and planning, I think I'll mostly leave to the next discussion around the business case. But I do have a question about where those allocated funds went. Did they get requisitioned? If so, it says in the upcoming report they got redirected. Maybe you want to defer that to the next discussion, but I would appreciate just to inform that discussion and inform budget discussions, I'd appreciate any high-level overview on why the surplus in the planning function is as it is, if just given that is our only really shared one. And then I had a question about the Area D parks. the surplus. We've never had surpluses because it's such a tight service. And I noticed that this year we had a $78,000 surplus, and I know there's some notes there, but it's not clear to me quite how they add up. So I would appreciate a little bit of understanding of that one. Thanks.
Mr. Chair, I'll address the first one in terms of, I don't want to confuse anyone in using a term redirect fund, but we all know that services contribute to different areas, different populations, different services contribute to different different areas of which they're receiving a service. So 500 planning is something that's charged through the entire 4 electoral areas. And let's say EA admin is another service that you all pay into. So when we're able to, and again, I use this term liberally, redirect, it's those services that have everything paying into that if one is high, we can lower the requisition in another, if you will, to kind of ease the burden of what happened in COVID. So we can't shuffle from one to the other, but if you're drawing from the same pot in 3 or 4 services, and some have a healthy surplus, then we're able to look at the overall requisition and say, okay, I think we can lower the requisition in one because we have a healthy surplus. So I don't know if that's super clear. I apologize if it's not, but there was 2 more questions in there, and either Mike or Aniko hopefully can address those.
I could take a quick stab here at the 614 for the Area D parks. So the common surplus we have for that is we usually have like additional maintenance and legal fees and whatnot, and they'll fluctuate from year to year. And then a large part of this surplus too was just for staff salaries, just because we have a new parks manager in place now, but that position was vacant for a little while. And then we also had some additional funding come into all the parks functions. So that was to add a bit. And then we had, that took care of actually some of the signage budget and everything. It got kind of related to COVID. So, and then we have a couple carry forwards that we're looking to, or there was a business case carry forward from a couple years ago for the parks data collection. That's another cause of the existing variance. But yeah, the change from that was about 7,000 from last year.
So the parks data collection project is still in the works, is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
So if there's 6 plus 8, 12, 13, 14,000 from inventory assessment carry forwards, some from staffing, some from just other general uncompleted projects, it's just, I mean, in the overall budget, it's not a lot of money. It's just we are always nickel and diming this one, so it seems high to me.
Yeah, the biggest chunk of it was the staffing, and then
Okay.
the related travel and training. The other thing is Area D has, I'm not sure what class they are, but more of a maintained parks. So when all that had to get shut down and whatnot, there was some savings of the fees, and like I say, then the extra COVID money came in because we tried to assign a lot of the COVID funds to any costs that we could directly identify, so that would help fund the service.
Okay, thank you.
And I think, if I may, Mr. Chair, may I speak?
Go ahead, Brenda.
Thank you. I think with Area D Parks, the bills haven't all come in yet for 2021 because after the drought this summer and the stress on the trees, because most of Area D's parks are nature parks, and the parks planner had to send in people to take out the danger trees that were snapping in the winds that came up right after the drought. And we had Story Creek, we had at least a dozen huge trees bucked down because they were leaning towards trails and things. So there's probably still bills to be paid from Area D Parks that are not being accounted for in this projected surplus in parks.
Yeah, again, Thank you for that, Director Lee, because again, what we want you to look at is just kind of a high level health of it. Is there a large variance in it, or is there some anomalies that stand out? So I think that's kind of our intent to provide it to you to look and
Yeah.
see just what anomalies are out there, good or bad.
Well, I think it's great that we have, we have surpluses right across the board available for 2022. So like you say, we can adjust some of the charges in the really expensive services and lower the costs in those that we can lower the costs in because we have surplus. And I think that's a really good idea. And I don't think we should, except for like asset management, using surplus for replacing assets, that's a good idea. But except for that, I think the monies that have been accumulated through surplus should be used to lower the tax requisitions. It's a really tough year for people right across the board. Now that CERB and all that is being curtailed, it's good. People are going to have a rough time, and I think we should go easy on them on local taxes.
So again, just to address that, so this is what we tried to do at some point last year because we were generating greater surpluses. So just the message on that is we did that at the height of COVID in 2020, and we might not have the latitude to do that as much this year, but we certainly applied that philosophy last year to the budget.
Mm-hmm. Well,
Okay.
when we get to the individual directors meetings, I'll be looking hard at those surpluses and to decide like how can we lighten up the burden on the taxpayers by reducing requisitions.
Yeah, and that was the intent, right? To give you something to kind of look at each individual service and the health or lack thereof it. So that's exactly what we were trying to do.
Keep in mind what Dave said and Mike said. This is the high level. Just look across the board at where we're at, and it's looking good. And then we can get into the nitty-gritty details at our one-on-one meetings and go from there. And I'm sure we'll have more discussion at electoral area services committees. So on this report, is there any further discussion on receipt? Seeing none, or sorry, anyone opposed? Seeing none, it's carried. Okay, then we have business case planner 2 position.
Move receipt.
Oh boy. Number 4,
Second.
receipt of the CAO's report. Moved and seconded. Anyone opposed? Okay.
So, Mr. Chair, if I may, following in the financial planning schedule is that the board has adopted a financial plan policy, basically, that base is base, and anything over and above those will be brought to the committees and the board for a recommendation, and then there's either support or not. If there's support for it, what will happen is we will incorporate that in the draft budget for you to have an opportunity to look at that and see what tangibly it means to your area, both collectively and individually. So as we've done in past years, we didn't do it last year because we had no business cases. And for electoral areas, we've heard a lot of discussion over the last year or so about work in OCPs and zoning bylaw updates and the whatnot. So it seemed to make a whole lot of sense to me that we just move forward with the business case to support an additional planning position to deal with the items that we seem to discuss regularly at the East meetings. So we put this forward for your opportunity to look at it. If you support the idea of it, it is kind of a semi-committal, as it will go in the draft budget. There's an opportunity again for you to look at that come, I believe, late January when we get year-end numbers, we get assessment numbers, we incorporate the actual surpluses, and you can see then what tangibly that additional full-time planner position in the budget would mean. And then at that point, you have the opportunity to say, okay, stick with it, or no, get rid of it. So at that, I'll turn it over to Aniko to run through her business case. You have questions, and then we have a resolution that either you support it going into the draft budget, and if you don't, it will be over to us. We won't populate the budget with any additional staffing for planning. So over to Aniko.
Thank you. Through the chair to the committee, I believe Edie will be bringing up a PowerPoint presentation to accompany my presentation. Thank you, Edie. So this is the only Electoral Area Services Committee business case presentation for you for this year. We've kept it really lean for you. Next slide, Edie, please. Thank you. So this is a electoral area specific service, of course, business case. It is under the strategic enhancement to service delivery area. And what we're looking to do is confirm funds for the Planner 2 position through the 2022 to 2026 financial plan. The options that you have as part of this presentation or following this presentation too is either approve or deny the business case. Thank you, Edie. Next slide. Next slide, thank you. So just to summarize our presentation here today with respect to this business case, what we've experienced over the past few years is a continuation of demand for the community services branch, both in parks and planning. In 2017, the board did recognize our needs for additional resourcing, and they did approve a Planner 2 position with the appropriate funding in the 2018 to 2022 financial plan. What we saw happen following that approval, though, is that our department experienced quite a bit of turnover for the small size of our department, and we then experienced associated vacancies as part of this, which then created difficulty in actually filling the position over the first two business or budget cycles. Sorry. In 2020, the funds for the position were temporarily redirected during COVID-19 to more appropriate areas. And now, as we're seeing ourselves phasing into 3 and 4 of the restart program, it's now time to look at potentially reconfirming these funds in the 2022 to 2026 financial plan. And what this will do is better able our department to deliver on our services and also our board directed initiatives. Next slide, please, Edie. Thank you. So our business problem that we're experiencing right now, like mentioned in the previous slide, is that we're consistently experiencing increased workloads, both in long-range planning and parks requirements, also key current projects, and then of course those ongoing board-directed initiatives. In the next couple slides, I'll highlight this in more detail, but what you'll see is that we've got 10 plus long-range planning projects, which are all at various stages of the process, as well as 15 or more key projects that we also have in progress, mostly in the parks area. And again, what we're seeing is we just don't have the staff resources to sufficiently manage our current workload and provide effective service delivery. The opportunity here is that additional staff resources would increase our ability to effectively manage the service and also improve the SRD's credibility as an effective and responsive organization. Next slide, please, Edie. So the proposed project objectives, mainly to improve the overall delivery of the planning and park services within the SRD's electoral areas. The enhancement of this service would allow for more timely processing of our development applications, also updates to the fundamental planning documents, completion of key projects, and implementation of board-directed initiatives. We're also hoping to elevate the SRD's regulatory and policy documents to reflect current legislative requirements and key policy directives. And finally, to overall better meet the needs of the board and improve the SRD's credibility as an effective and responsive local government. Next slide. Thank you, Edie. Key deliverables associated with this business case with respect to long-range projects. We're looking at the Electoral Area B zoning bylaw review, the Electoral Area C integrated community sustainability plan, planning and procedures and fees bylaw, parks rules and regulation bylaws, parks master plans, park inventory work, and the Electoral Area C OCP policy work. Other key deliverables with respect to current board directed initiatives and projects. We're looking at the electoral area parks acquisitions, housing needs reports for the electoral areas, active transportation plan project, the commemorative gifts program, as well as a number of capital projects in all three electoral areas that pay into the park service, including Siskin, Carrington, Quoss, Blinken, Q Cove Trail, Granite Bay, Hoskin, Quadra Links, Parks and Trails, Oyster Bay Shoreline Park, Oyster River Nature Park, and Salmon Point. When we look at risks and benefits associated with this business case, we were unable to identify any risks and numerous benefits. What we are looking at here too is that should the funds not be reconfirmed, we actually think that there are risks associated with our ability to deliver on key projects and services. There are tangible benefits, there are intangible benefits. Of course, tangible benefit would be that we would increase the capacity of our department to complete items with respect to the deadlines that we've been provided and increase our service delivery expectations and those of the board. Intangible, we're hoping to create a more sustainable work environment and increase our credibility as an organization that can address our parks and planning matters in a timely manner. When we look at the cost benefit analysis and the proposed sources of funding, if we were to reconfirm the use of these funds, it will enhance the service through the addition of a second full-time planner for the department to be able to focus on our key parks and planning projects that are currently in process. You'll see the table in the slide here provides an overview of what the budget requirements would be to fund the Planner 2 position through the 2022 to 2026 financial plan. The first year, 2022, you'll see we've actually allocated funds for 8 months only, given waiting for the budget process to be completed in 2022. That 2022 year does include benefits and required office equipment for the position. And then subsequent years, you will see totals, including both salary and benefits. What I would like to note is that these above costs could be offset, of course, by additional planning revenues that we see through our applications such. Next, thank you. And so what our recommendation is to the committee is that the 2022 to 2026 financial plan include the provision for a full-time Planner 2 position to be funded in the Planning 500 function. And that's all I have. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Aniko. I have a list of people. I have Nova. I have number 10. I'm not sure who that is. And I certainly want to speak to it myself. So start with Nova.
I've got my hand up there as well, Jim.
So do I.
Okay, Gerald. Yeah, there you are. Okay, Gerald. And Brenda.
Thanks, Jim. Yeah, I trust we'll spend a little bit of time on this. I won't say everything in the first round here, but I do want to ask a little bit more of what our CA was speaking to in the last item around redirection of funds. So just pulled up the business case here. It says, board approved in 2017 full-time Planner 2 position. These funds were intentionally redirected during COVID as a temporary measure. However, now that we're in the restart, it's appropriate to reconfirm. So I would ask that we go back to the slide where the first slide that had maybe 5 or 6 bullet points on it that Aniko was went through with us. So I understand that in the first couple of years, 2000 and I don't know, 17, 18, 19, we had a lot of staff turnover and we didn't get to filling this position. However, unfortunately, I can grok that. but I'm not understanding why we didn't continue to try to fill this position, given that we can't take funds, as our CEO reminded us of, from one function to the other. The redirection of funds, as I understood, was simply to try to have the overall requisition be relatively stable, so such that reduced funds or reduced requisition in this service balance, perhaps greater requisitions in other services. I don't know what those greater requisitions in other services were, and I don't remember there being a board discussion and board direction to, quote, intentionally redirect those funds, and I'm wondering if somebody can remind me if there was. I don't see this as, from my memory, anything that was intentionally taken off the table, and now that it's 4 years and the backlog of work items is so mammoth, I'm really grappling with what to do. I have always supported these kinds of proposals, and in fact, really advocated for them. I think we need a more robust planning service to be able to get to the community needs. But we are in such a backlog position that I don't know that filling this is going to do it anymore. And I'm starting to consider really unprofessional things like not funding the planning service to the full degree, or repealing bylaws because they're so out of date they don't serve, and I don't want to do any of those things. But I'm really concerned at the position that we're in, and so I would like a more fulsome explanation as to why there was an, quote, intentional redirect of these funds. I don't remember that being board direction, and if it was staff's intentional decision rather than just things were so full and there was so little staff and it was such crazy times. Like if that is the reason, I get it, they're extenuating times, but I'm not aware of there being an intentional decision to not fill this position. So that's the first piece I'd really love someone to speak to.
Okay, Dave, Aniko, I don't know.
Sorry, I was muted, so I can probably start with that. So planning position, super easy. I do disagree with you is that there was an overall board discussion during COVID that if there was a way we can ease the requisition burden on residents, that staff were directed to do that as they could. I can tell you COVID started in the very first quarter of 2020. There was a shutdown. Nobody was hiring positions, and even if you wanted to hire positions, you couldn't do it. So I think jobs went down from probably 500 to 600 posting on Civic Info to about 52 of them. So whether it was a strategic thing to do or practical, there was that planning position in there. So I apologize. I think using the word redirecting is not fair. But if you took the planner 2 position was included in the requisition there, we weren't going to fill the position, so we reduced the requisition in that planning function, take that money away, and what that did was ease the burden, the financial burden during COVID on that service. So what we're saying now is, leading up to COVID, for a number of reasons, the position didn't get filled. COVID happened. There's no way you can fill it. Nobody's going to apply for a job. Nobody's hiring. Nobody's doing anything. We use that as an opportunity to lower that requisition in that service. So what we're coming back to is saying that now that we're getting back on our feet, 2021, hardly anybody was hiring or taking jobs. Let's repopulate that function with the planning money. So we lowered it, eased the burden, and now we're saying we're asking to breathe life back into that.
So I appreciate that. That feels a little bit more genuine than perhaps my understanding of what was written. So my follow-up question then is, given the backlog, given that when we created this position 4 years ago, it was desperately needed, and all of that work that we knew it was desperately needed for hasn't happened, is filling this position and this position alone actually going to get us to where we need, or do we need now 2 or 3 or 4, God knows, I don't know. Like what do we need to do to actually address this work? Because I think I never expected to speak such words, but I think we're in a position of either needing to really get to this backlog in a very timely way, or really consider pulling some of our bylaws, because the outdated nature of them is actually providing a disservice to our community. So what is it going to take realistically to address the backlog? And is this going to do it? And if not, what else do we need to be considering in our budget discussions going forward at EASC around long-range planning and projects?
Well, I'm just going to provide an editorial to that, say what it takes. It's obviously staff's attempt to say this is what we think can help address it, but collectively, like we have projects and bylaws, as you've seen on the table. But the more things that are continued to bring forward at every meeting, whether they be bylaw enforcement, legal, new shiny objects, it continually chips away at our ability to do that. And I put that question back onto you. How much are you going to continue to add on to staff through things that are not on work plans? They're out of our control. So I can't really answer you and say specifically what we're able to do. This is our best attempt, but we're merely staff. We take direction from committees and boards. So if you pile things on, if you bring more legal, more bylaw, more planning, more grants, more whatever, then that just dilutes our ability to address things. And that's in the board's control, not ours.
Okay, I'd like to move on, but to somebody else if we could for a bit, and you can come back. Okay, I think Gerald, we're next.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Aniko. That was an excellent report. I noticed that the intent of this additional staff member is for long-range planning, perhaps in parks. And I'm sure, as we're all aware, Area A doesn't participate in the Park Service. And in long-range planning, I didn't see anything there that had a capital A on it referring to Area A. Is there any benefit whatsoever here to Area A that would justify my share of the costs?
Thank you through the chair to the director. The intent of having a second planner 2 position is actually to be able to focus each of the positions more directly to either parks or planning, and having someone actually dedicated to long range planning, which is a need that we've continued to have here for the last 10 years, basically. Our hope is that by having someone that is dedicated to long-range planning, we're able to address these planning bylaws in a more timely manner, which does impact electoral area A. The planning and procedures fees bylaw is overall for electoral areas. Your bylaws are actually on the list to be dealt with and addressed. They're not in the hierarchy that was provided here today. What I have heard, and correct me if I'm wrong, at the last few meetings where we've had discussions with respect to where we're at with our bylaws and what the needs are for each of the EAs, was that electoral area A was comfortable with the bylaws as they currently stand. So if that's not the case, certainly that's a conversation we more than welcome at the one-on-ones. And there are a number of bylaws that we see perhaps we could have a discussion about for electoral area A, because there are a number of bylaws there that are quite historic in nature, and there's options that we can look at to address that. So I do think there's a benefit to electoral area A with this proposed business case. Hopefully that answers your question.
If I might respond, Mr. Chair, thank you, Aniko. Yeah, Area A and its bylaws are content with they are. When the residents tell me they want to change, then I'll come and talk to you about it. But in the meantime, we're good the way we are. I'm not convinced that this additional position is really a cost-effective benefit for Area A. I understand it might be for other areas. Thank you.
Okay, before I move on to the next speaker, I'd like to just say one thing in response to Dave's comments about the fact that the committee keeps throwing more and more things at the planning department and staff, and I totally agree. We do it all the time. Every meeting, another report, another this, another that. And that's both at this committee and at the board. So I empathize with that one. But I have to also point out to you, Dave, and your staff that because somebody comes through the door and comes to the counter and says, I have the best thing since sliced bread to propose in area X, and I want to put it forward. And it's a major development. And that major development now becomes part of the planning department's workload ahead of the other long-range planning issues that we're actually working on. I thoroughly believe that it is partly up to staff at the counter to say, we would be more than happy to accept your application. Please understand that you are sixth in line and we will get to you when we get to you. That people that come in off the street do not necessarily have the prioritization that they have been getting forever, as long as I've been a director. And those projects turn into all-encompassing planning department issues. So I think there's a shared responsibility here, Dave, that is directors at committee and staff at the counter. And I'm not saying what counter or what staff or what department. I'm just saying that these things need to be looked at. Maybe there needs to be a long-range calendar taped to the desk that says, oh yeah, we can do you when we've done these, and move on. That's a suggestion. Okay, now I'll go on after my short editorial and ask for, there was a hand up in that circle that says +10, but there isn't now.
There's
So,
Brenda Lee, still waiting.
Yep, I got you. I was just saying your name, Brenda. Go for it.
Thank you. I don't support adding another planner to the staff. I totally don't agree with Director Anderson that we need to continually tackle these bylaws that are in place at the moment. I believe in evolution rather than revolution in planning. And, you know, we did this Cortez zoning bylaw. Staff put forward a full bylaw, went to public hearing, didn't go anywhere. I mean, how many thousands of dollars went into that and it didn't get adopted? What I'm having a trouble with planning right now is that when an applicant walks up to the front counter and they apply for something that is opposed in the OCP, it offends my OCP, and they decide, oh, we'll just make it legal, we'll write a new zone.
I think we're off topic here, Mr. Chair.
Okay, well, in my opinion, planning should be looking, you know, to the community and the director for direction, not just taking their own direction to anyone who walks through the door. And it's causing a lot of consternation. And I feel that just another planner would be that much more problems to deal with. I'm perfectly happy with my 1996 official community plan, which, by the way, Director Anderson, gets updated regularly. It's not a static document. It's not something we have to overhaul. It's something that we rely on to have a beautiful rural community and not overrun by inappropriate planning. And I just, and so another point that I want to make is, so basically we need to have a discussion maybe with the CAO and the planning manager about, and the directors about how we interact, because things are not working right now very well. The other thing I want to say is that I have said several times that Area D already went through a parks master planning process with Judy Walker. We hired a consultant. We did our parks master plan. I'm not asking for any overhaul of our parks master plan. We already have one. And I'm not interested in putting money into it. And yet here it does pop up again in this business plan. I don't want it. I don't want to overhaul our parks master plan. So, you know, just leave Area D alone. I'm not interested in paying more money so that, you know, we can contemplate our navels over on Cortez and wherever.
Okay,
I want
Mr.
to
Chair.
keep things the same.
yes, Dave.
No, I was just in point of order, Mr. Chair.
Not
Stay
when
on
I called.
topic.
I called it. Okay, and I saw Gerald's hand up before Nova's. If Gerald didn't have his hand up or it was inadvertent, Nova, you're next. You're
Isn't
muted.
this fun? Yeah. Um, Yeah, this clearly had support by the committee some years ago, and I think there's such a level of frustration now. I don't know where this is going to go. If Gerald and Brenda aren't going to support it, then then it's done, and I don't know where I'll land. But what I will say is, for me, this is part of a larger context conversation that I think we need to have at EASC in the upcoming budget discussions. I'd like to understand if this isn't going to be supported. Are there other ways of putting funds aside to either contract social profit organizations or professionals? If this is going to happen, is this going to be sufficient? I hear our CAO's relative common comment that it's really up to directors to not put more workload on the table, and I think respectfully that that is part of the business that we do to serve our communities, and that is part of normal business, is to have odd things come up throughout the year. I have made such an effort to not put things on the workload for so many years that we're in a position where I don't feel like I am serving my community very well, both in backlogged items that are on the work plan and other items that I don't bring forward because we can't get to the backlogged ones. So I would like an approach from staff that says, look, this is the reality we live in. There are these things that directors bring forward. There are all these numbers of backlogged issues. How do we meet those needs rather than saying it's just up to directors to not give us anything to do that's new? And so I would like to understand this in the larger context of what is it going to take to do the work that we have in front of us, and not just say, don't give us work. And I truly don't mean to be disrespectful with that, but I'm asking, can we actually address the business in front of us in a meaningful way or not? And my support for this will be contingent upon it being part of that larger discussion, I think. But my support may or may not be moved based on Gerald.
Again, if I can, Mr. Chair, don't misunderstand me. The staff are happy to do the work. Bring as much as you want forward. Just don't complain about when we're not getting to OCPs or zoning bylaw review. I'm not telling you to not bring work forward. You never hear us complain about that. But when we hear you say you're not getting to X, Y, and Z, our role is to provide you with an opportunity to give us the ability to do that. And that's what we have here. It's not rocket science. You either provide resources to get work done or the work gets prioritized. And we address what's in front of us. We have resolutions constantly from the board. We have applications coming from the community, and we deal with those. And we have new business come up. When we have a breather in time, we try and get to long-range planning and parks. But you know, we're happy with the way things are going now. We're trying to address the comments that have come forward to us, in that not addressing these issues, we provide an opportunity for you. If you don't want it, then it's going to be status quo. And you don't hear complaints from us. We keep doing the work. Bring as much on as you want.
And I'm not complaining,
Yeah,
Mr. CEO. What I'm asking as what I'm trying to get clear is, what would it take to actually resource the workload? How much funding, how many positions, how much money would it take? I'm not saying do a whole bunch with nothing. I'm saying, please bring us the full budget proposal to actually meaningfully address what we have, and let us talk about that.
Well, let's look at this. If this isn't supported, then bring it up at your one-on-ones, your needs, and we'll do our best to address it there. Because this is a collective effort to provide, this is a shared service here. At one-on-ones, you have individual services there. And again, if this isn't successful, bring up your issues. We will address those financially in the plan to get those things done. This is our first attempt. Again, it's a shared service. I don't know what's so funny about that.
It's just, I don't have an individual Area B planning function, so I can't do the zoning update unless we do it collectively.
Well,
no disrespect intended, I just don't have a mechanism in one-on-one.
Bring your problems and we will do our best to solve them. They will require financial resources, I can promise you that.
Mr. Chair, if I could speak.
Okay, I have to ask, since I can't see who it is, there is another hand that's been up in my little circle with number 10 in it. Could somebody tell me who that is? Is that you, Gerald? It doesn't look like.
Jim, that 10
Brenda.
is just 10 participants. We only have Brenda, and Brenda's the only one with a hand up right now. Don't look at that 10. That's just 10 people are participating.
Actually,
but
Mr.
a hand
Chair,
is up.
Mr. Chair, you are corrected. It was actually me with my hand up. If you wanted to provide a little bit of clarity to Director Anderson's ask about resourcing, all I can say, if you're willing, Mr. Chair.
Sure, go ahead, Annika.
Thank you. Is I would just like to make it clear that our current staff complement is extremely limited. We have one planner, one sitting in the office that is dedicated solely to current planning. That position deals with day-to-day workload. May that be telephone calls, emails from the public, from realtors, from lawyers, whoever that may be, and all the applications that come through the door. That is one person. There is no capacity for that person to do anything outside of current planning. We are legislated to deal with those applications that come through the door. We cannot tell somebody come back in 6 months. That's not an option for us. So that's that position. We have not had a planning manager in our organization for 2 years. We have just filled that position. We are starting to see some really good traction from that position being filled, and hopefully, improving our capacity. It is improving our capacity. But we don't have any planners right now dedicated to long-range planning, or any other projects that may come through the door. We have one parks person, which is, again, on the ground parks person. That is not, there's no capacity in that role to deal with any larger parks projects. That's why you're seeing a lot of these parks projects not moving as quickly as possible, because, off the sides of our desks, some of us are trying to put in as much as we can. We've had myself in this role long before the past manager retired. It was with only myself here and no planning manager. So, over the last 2 years, you've basically had two people trying to manage the entire community services. Outside of bylaw. Again, bylaw, we've only had someone in that role for 9 months. So when you ask about capacity in community services, I think you really have to look at it in a greater perspective. And what happens off of everybody's desk does affect the rest of the EAs and the services that they're being delivered. So when you speak to capacity and whether or not this will, do it, I'm hopeful it will do it. I think this is a great plan. I think if you want to see us, maintaining ourselves as a legitimate organization with legislative documents that are up to standard, then this is what it's going to take. You're going to continue to see frustration if you don't have somebody in this role dedicated to address all of these items. And if I may, the items that are listed here are all board approved items. So if you didn't buy into one of these projects that are on the plan, then that didn't include you. So any comment with respect to any of the park inventories or park master plans, if you didn't want to be included in that, that isn't dedicated to your EA. But everything you see on this screen has been approved by the board. And if we want to see this work done, we need to see internal resourcing capacity. Thank you.
Okay, so I see another hand on the side. I don't know who that is. Brenda, you're next. Go ahead.
Thank you.
I do want to get in line myself.
On the point of the parks spending on the master plans and whatnot, Director Wally and I are not interested in putting money into a master plan for the parks. But each of us electoral areas have a community parks function, and perhaps those directors who want to dedicate some money to hiring a consultant to come in and do a parks master plan for their area, if they don't already have one, they could possibly incorporate that into their area parks budget. And then that would be, that would give you some consultancy time to do that part and take it out of the planning workload. But I think I just can't support another, we had $720,000 in the budget for planning last year. And what we got out of it was, from my perspective, a lot. Okay. I feel like we're putting in a lot of money, and we need to streamline the system so that we're also serving the public interest, not just the private interests.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And I'm sorry, I'm going to interject here, if you don't mind. I think that we need something. The business case that's been presented gives us another full-time planner 2 position, which I've said for a number of years, we do need another planner. And I feel that, I can support that, but not with the business problem and opportunity section that goes throughout and tells what kinds of things that are going to be done. When I see completion of Area C Integrated Community Sustainability Plan as number 2 item, I want to see a black marker cross that out. That sustainability plan exercise was a complete failure. Not your fault. That was consultants that were hired. They did a very poor job.
I don't think it's really valuable to dissect her presentation. She's trying to give you a high level approach of what work that can be done that has been brought forward to us. I think it's a waste of time to cherry pick an item out here and there.
But Dave, the reason that I'm suggesting it is because that would be money and time that does not need to be dedicated to this new person.
Sure, but
there's 20 grand.
Yeah, she scratches it out. We have the same business case, okay?
Okay, well, I need assurance that it's scratched out.
I said to you, this is a business case. We are looking for support to integrate something in a draft plan, and looking for your support or not.
Okay, as a draft plan, so that means it'll come back to us as a more definite plan.
Draft financial plan. You can talk about what you want individually at the one-on-ones when we go through each service. But this is, again, a high level. Does the committee want to see this position embedded financially in the draft financial plan that you'll see come January?
And that's exactly why I am talking about it here, is because if you adopt the plan, then you're adopting the information within the plan. and the information within the plan are not things that I can necessarily support. So that then throws the plan back. If there was a commitment to say, you know, the draft plan is high level, basic, blah, blah, blah. And then we talk about what are acceptable items to be long-term planning issues.
In
That
due
is
respect, Mr. Chair, Onoco has provided you that in this presentation and has identified those as board directives. So if that isn't suitable, then don't support the proposal. But what you've seen here is what we're saying we can support.
Okay, well, it just puts me in a really tough spot, Dave, because you know I want to see a planner. And at the same time, there are items within the planning report that I can't support. So, you know, and I have in my my notes, I had put that, you know, I wanted to thank you for the addition of this this much needed staff person. But personally, you know, I don't want to add another person that I am supposedly not allowed to talk to. You and I have had this conversation numerous times about collaboration.
Okay, now we're really getting off topic, Mr. Chair. Like, let's get back to the report. This is a business case to support an additional staff member.
Well, okay, if we can,
We're really
where do we
getting
talk
into the
about
weeds
that?
here. Like, I don't know this person's name either, Director Abrams. So, like, we're way too far in the
Well,
weeds here.
Okay, well, I'm sorry I diverged from the topic at hand. My apologies. And I would go on to Brenda, or sorry, Nova, I believe you were first. And then Brenda, and then Aniko.
I just wanted to call a question on receipt.
Thank you.
I still have questions.
You still have questions on receipt? Okay. Then let's have the questions. Go ahead. Nova.
Thank you. I don't think we're in the weeds respectfully. I think it's really integral about how this position would function, what it would do, how it would communicate with directors, how it integrates into the staff complement. I think they're all really important pieces.
If I may, Mr. Chair, sorry, I have to interject. Look, I'm going to let the bad news out now. If we're going to have a discussion about the director's ability to communicate with this planner position, we're way too far in the weeds. We have a planning manager and we have a general manager of planning. That is your point of communication. I don't think it's integral that you know that you have a direct link to communication to this individual.
I realize there has been a lot of change and there's a lot of frustration with the result. And I'm trying to get our work done. And I'm just highlighting that part of the frustration includes communication and work plan items. There used to be a day where this committee really saw the work plan items and could discuss it. So I think you're seeing the result of many years of frustration with the system, and we've never questioned this position until now. And so my question is, Mr. Chair, through the staff, is given that this is staff recommendation, that staff has never wavered off wanting this position, and that you have previous board direction to support this position, and we have not requisitioned it sometimes because of extenuating COVID circumstances, but this has been supported and continues to be recommended. Why is it in front of us again? Why isn't it just integrated into the budget and requisition? I begrudge the fact that this has come up again when in fact this is what the board has directed and this is what you recommend.
Yeah, you're actually quite correct on that. I thought it to be respectful to bring it to the committee because we've had so much discussion. But yes, it is a board approved position. But because of COVID and we again deferred or lowered requisition because the position wasn't going to be hired, I thought it was appropriate to bring it back to the committee and say, you know, I want your support for breathing life because it's your money back into this budget.
Well, it might mean we lose it.
And I think it's totally appropriate what Dave just said, that he brought it back out of respect for the directors, and it's here before us, so we're gonna deal with it. Brenda, you had your hand up. Did you still?
No,
have
I'd like
hand-
to, I'd like
hand
to
up or
call a
no?
question on receipt so we can get on to voting on B.
Okay, and Aniko, I believe you had your hand up. Do you,
No, she
on
doesn't.
receipt? Okay,
I'm good, thank you, Mr.
are
Chair.
there any other comments? Any other comments on receipt? Okay, anyone opposed to receipt? That's carried. Okay, so then the next part is item B. That it include the financial plan include provision for a full-time planner, 2 position to be funded in Plan 500 function.
So moved.
I'll second it for discussion.
And speaking to it as the mover, I think although there's a lot of discussion yet to be had, and we have a couple of dedicated budget meetings at EASC to discuss these kinds of things, I think that taking it off the table before we even talk about how it fits into the larger picture is would not be responsible at this time. We have many future opportunities to kill it, but I think we should see how this plays out.
Okay, are there any further comments?
Question on the motion.
Okay, so the motion is to include it in the budget, to be funded in the planning 500 function. Are there any opposed?
I'm opposed.
And Lee is opposed.
Defeated.
Okay, you're muted, Nova, I see you're,
Well, it's defeated, Mr. Chair.
okay, with the 2 votes, yes, you're right, it is defeated. Okay, so that at this time, the business case for the planner 2 position has been defeated.
Yep. Will not include it in the draft financial plan.
Okay,
This goes to board for us to vote
It does.
again forward, is that right?
Yeah, these are just, again, committee recommendations.
okay, but this does not, for my clarity, this does not preclude something else coming forward at a future date to possibly
Well,
replace this?
Never say never, but we do have a budget process in the calendar, and we have to fit things into an appropriate timeline. So we can't be hop, skipping, jumping around. This is ironically just what we're talking about here. We have things to do. We have timelines and deadlines to meet. However, this will show up again at the board. If you change your mind, there's your opportunity there. But
Okay,
we're always at the whim of resolutions by the board. So at any time, board committee is open to give us resolutions, and we are directed to deal with them.
Okay, thank you for that, Dave. Can you please just, sorry to sidestep here, get the EAS one-on-one meetings? Are those the ones that, one of them was scheduled for November 15th? Is that
They're
is that what that
November
meeting
10th.
was?
They're November 10th, Mr. Chair.
November 10th.
Area C 1 to 3 on the 10th.
Why don't
Do-
I have that? Oh,
Yeah,
Part of the
ask
finance.
Edith myself, 'cause I didn't have that noted. Have times been set?
Yeah, it was in board reports, and times are in the report. The approved calendar by the board.
boy,
I
I
looked on
should-
the approved calendar of meetings and couldn't find it. I don't mean to be argumentative, but if somebody could direct me to where to find that, I would be most grateful.
Sure, I'm
did.
sure Edie can send you a copy of that report.
Okay, and that was the one that had
The
area
approved financial
A,
plan with
such,
all the
such.
dates. Yeah. Yeah.
Are there
Okay,
agendas with those meetings as one-on-ones?
Yeah,
Mr.
we'll
Chairman, there
produce
will be
agendas, yeah.
agendas published later this week and for that meeting on the 10th. Yes.
So maybe when Edie sends, or whoever sends out the agendas, they could just give each director their date and time. I did copy the report that the board passed onto my emails, so I could go and dig for it, but I'm not sure when Area D's time is.
Area D, you are the 10th again. We're all on the same date, 3
Yeah.
to 5 p.m.
3 to 5. Okay, I'll put that on my kitchen calendar.
And A and B?
Okay, I remember. I
A
remember
is not A is 9 to 10, B is
saying
10 to
this.
12. They're virtual, they're open to the
is-
public.
Thank you.
C is 1 to 3, D
What
is
is
3 to
C?
5.
Okay, I remember seeing this, but for some reason, it's not in my calendar. And that actually overlaps with a coastal community network meeting. What is the EASC special meeting on November 15th?
November 15th?
That's what I've got.
That is a meeting that you 4 directors requested, and I don't have an agenda for that. So you requested it. There were additional meetings. I have no idea what's going to be on the agenda, so the chair is going to have to populate myself with what you want to see on it, because you called them. It was
Okay.
outside the board calendar for the financial plan. You wanted 2 additional meetings. The second is in January. We'll be at our regular East meeting when we set the calendar, but I have no idea what you want for an agenda on the 15th or whatever that day is. I thought it was December. Tom, help me out. I thought it was early December. Is it not?
I
We've got-
do believe November 15th was discussed.
Oh,
Again,
it was? Okay.
not knowing what the topics were to be discussed at the meeting, but I do believe it was put forward as a possible special meeting date.
And the other one that I have, and Dave, you're right. I have ESC budget 9:30 special on Tuesday, December 7th.
Yeah, that's the first of the 2, let's call them special or additional meetings that the East directors requested. The second, I thought for convenience, we would hold at a regular January East meeting. That meeting date hasn't been set. I think it'll be set this afternoon by the board. So the December, sorry, did you say 7th meeting? That is the one where the chair is going to have to inform us of what the agenda needs to be.
And
Okay,
Ms.
but you just said that we were going to be having one on November 15th.
You
as a
said that,
special.
not
Those
me.
were the 2.
You said that, not me.
Okay, but I mean, you agreed that yes, or Tom or somebody agreed that we did state that we would like to have a meeting on, and this was, I wrote it down as special EASC, Monday, the 15th of November.
Mr. Chairman, just to clarify, I do recall that was talked about. I don't believe it was ever settled that yes, there would be a meeting on that date.
We
Certainly
set
staff
out-
are not aware of what it is that the directors would like to talk about on that date.
Yeah.
So.
So we sent out options to directors, and the directors replied that the December 7th would be the date. The 15th does not exist as a meeting day, so don't worry about that. If you talked about it, that was not what we settled on. December 7th is the first additional meeting that East requested. And the second date on that will be whatever the East meeting date is in January when the board sets it. What I'm saying is the December 7th meeting is an agenda that's going to have to be populated by the chair.
Okay, and it was my understanding, I believe it was you, Nova, that brought this up, that we wanted 2 extra meetings to discuss our work plans for EASC. And They were the two dates that I already said, as I recall, were the ones that were thrown out as possibilities. And now, Dave, you're suggesting that one of them will be included with regular EASC, which was not the intent. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought that that was that you were asking for.
Out of convenience, we can have it on the same day. It doesn't matter to me. We can come up with another date in January. I think you need to focus on the first one in December. That we've sent out correspondence. The directors agreed that that would be fine. The agenda for that, I'm uncertain what that is. So it's December 7th, and prior to that, we'll have to figure out what you want us to put on the agenda, because that was an additional financial planning meeting that East requested of us. Staff have identified a financial plan schedule that we have, that we will populate with items that we have identified in those reports. Again, the 7th, I don't know what you want.
Okay, and I don't know either, Dave. I'm just trying to clarify what's going on. I'm not arguing with you. But I know, it was my recollection anyway, that 2 meetings were requested to discuss our work plan, I believe. And they were separate
I
from
believe they were
regular.
characterized as financial planning meetings. But anyways, that meeting's set, so I don't think we need to talk about it here.
Okay, well, we do need to talk about the January one though, because that's coming up later today.
We'll come up, once that schedule is set, we'll know what dates are available and are unavailable, and we'll do the same as the 7th. We'll reach out to the directors and find a day that works for you.
Okay, so that would mean amending the schedule that the board will approve.
No, we'll work around it. We'll find out the landmines, and we'll find a day in January that works for the 4 of you.
Okay, before today's meeting?
No, after today's meeting, we will see what the calendar looks like, and we will reach out to you and find an available date in January.
Okay, and then we would have that date, plus we would have our regular EASC meeting date, which is set by the board later.
If that's what you like, there are dates that you requested of us, so whatever you want.
Yeah, okay, well, it wasn't me. I just am trying to get it clear for my book, so I know what I'm doing. Okay, nobody, you have your hand up. What is it?
Just 2 things. Jim, you'd said that November 10th you had another meeting. I can do any time that day if switching times helps you. And I'm willing to help you think through the agenda setting for our 2 additional budget meetings if that's something that we need to do on our own without sort of the regular staff support. Yes, they were motions put forward by me, supported unanimously by all of us, to have 2 times where we could actually discuss the joint planning function, which we didn't get a chance to discuss last year in any way before it was too late. So if you want some help with that, let me know.
Okay, well, thank you for that. I appreciate it. And I appreciate knowing that I, didn't make this up in my head. It did actually happen. Okay, so yeah, just changing the time on the 10th would make a difference for me. So if that works, that's fine. But that would be meeting 1, and then meeting 2 would be the one that Dave was talking about on December 7th. That would be the 2. Oh, okay. I'll close my day timer so it doesn't get me in trouble anymore. All right. Request for economic development funding, Quadra ICANN Society, item number 5.
Move
Receipt.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay. Anyone opposed? That carries.
Move the recommendation.
Second.
Okay, so that's for $2,000 to ICANN for economic development service from the Economic Development Service. Okay, moved and seconded. Any discussion? Anyone opposed? That's carried. Item 6, request for financial assistance, Ocean Grove PAC.
Move
Move
receipt.
receipt, second.
Any discussion? Anyone
This is-
opposed? Carried. Item B, ready recommend a
Move-
grant for $1,000
B.
bucks.
I move B.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion?
Yeah,
All
I'd
those in
just like to
favor?
say Ocean Grove has been applying for this $1,000 each year, and they do great projects that benefit the whole community, such as a community garden, such as a new playground equipment out in near the road where, you know, kids from the community that are preschool and whatnot can use that equipment. They do Christmas concerts and bazaars and all kinds of things, usually that involve the rest of the community. So it is something that we really value in Area D and appreciate the work of our Ocean Grove Parent Advisory Council.
Okay, thank you. All right. So anyone opposed? So that's carried. All right, now we had under addendum. What was it? Nova? Help me out here.
Mr. Chairman, Area C,
It's your
Integrated
Quadras
Sustainability Plan.
Sustainability.
Yeah, just before we open the formal meeting, I made note that in the minutes from our previous East meeting, when this item was discussed, just pulling it up, that there was a deferral, that the matter be deferred to the next East meeting. And so I was wondering why this wasn't brought up on the normal East agenda, and then we've added it now.
Okay, so if I may, since it's been added on behalf of Area C, this would, I guess, Dave, you may think this is delving into the weeds of something that doesn't exist because it didn't pass, but it's separate. Okay, we had an ICSP project approved, announced by Rald at a board meeting or at a committee meeting, that we got this money to do the ICSP for Quadra and the Outer Islands. And it went on forever. It went nowhere. Things didn't happen that were supposed to happen. And the community was very, very concerned and upset about the whole thing, which, you know, planning is well aware of that. Annika is well aware of that. And I think the whole board is well aware of it. So it seems like, I don't know, a couple of meetings ago or a meeting ago, a report, at least verbal, was brought back saying that basically 50 grand had been spent, there was still 20 there, and that they're, you know, we were going to try and figure out what to do with that, how we're going to do it. So what I would like to, just as a preamble, I would like to say that what I want to see happen is I want to see that 20 grand, if it can be, because it's a grant from somebody else, if it can be moved into our work on the OCPs, plural, for the Outer Islands and Quadra Island, just moved into that, into the planning department's needs. Or if that can't be, if it has to be given back, give it back, and to scrap the information that was put forward in their report to the communities about what people had told them. People that have read that report have absolutely blasted me for, and this is from all over Area C, Outer Islands and Quadra, saying that what they read had nothing to do with what happened at the meetings. There were two I believe, public meetings, one on Quadra, one at Surge Narrows. And so people do not agree with what was presented by the consultants. So I would like to just say that I would like our planning department to not consider that information in whatever is to come along, being the needed things, which are the OCP and bylaw for both areas, outer and Quadra. So if I need to make a motion to
Yes, please.
um, to do that, okay. So could I just say that the
You have it written
problem,
out?
Dave, is I don't. No, I don't. I'm sorry, because this just came up. Can you tell me, or Aniko maybe, can you tell me if that $20,000 that's left over can be used by the planning department, or is that something that has to be researched?
Thank you, through the chair. To clarify to the committee, the regional district has not received any funding from UBCM with respect to this project. And these funds were granted specifically for an ICSP. So those funds could not be allocated to another project. If we default on our agreement and not provide a completed document, we will receive no funds as part of the agreement details. So the regional district would be on the hook for the $50,000 that have been spent to date.
Okay, that's very unfortunate. Was this a UBCM granting project or otherwise? That would be to you, Aniko.
Sorry, my apologies. Yes.
It was UBCM money. Okay, is there a possibility that we could negotiate that away?
Negotiate.
The $50,000
Negotiate
part of it, because
$50,000 for the work done to date.
yes.
Do you want us to call them and say, you're unhappy with the plan and what we spent to date? You don't want to complete it, but you want them to pay for what was done to date?
Sounds pretty ridiculous, doesn't
Yes.
it?
I think it would make
Okay,
sense,
so,
Mr. Chair.
yes, Brenda?
I think it would make sense to write a letter to UBCM with a $50,000 check and say, thanks for providing this, but we were unable to come up with a satisfactory plan and do not feel that we should continue this project. So here's your money back.
Okay, and the $20,000 doesn't enter into it because
I would just like give him back the money. You get a plan that isn't worth the paper it's written on, and the public don't agree with it, so send it back.
Okay, because the only other option would be to complete the plan at the additional $20,000, as poor as it may be in the end, get the money and then just scrap the plan. So I don't know, if that's a more palatable way of doing it. I'm asking staff advice here, senior staff.
I'm not going to give you advice on that. Like that would tell you to finish a plan and throw it in the garbage?
Can I offer a piece
Well,
of?
that would tell that was not quite the way I put it, Dave, but thank you. Go ahead, Nova. You said you wanted to offer a piece of advice.
Just a piece of
Muted.
information. not advice. Could I ask that staff bring up the recommendation that was before the committee last time when we received the draft work of this ISP? It said that I'm not suggesting we do this. I'm just trying to get context and not understanding why we didn't.
Is this a timely manner, Mr. Chair? I'm not sure why we're on the fly, like, dealing with this.
Because
Like, why
last
the chair
month-
sets the agenda. It
Right.
clearly wasn't important to be on the agenda. I'm not sure why we're off the seat of our pants dealing with this. Mr. Chair, I'd suggest if it's something you want to add to the next agenda, we do that at the next agenda meeting.
the direction from last East meeting was that it be deferred to this meeting. So my question to the staff
we have an agenda setting meeting with the chair that the chair approves items. He didn't include it on the agenda. It's not here. I don't know why we're talking about it.
Move deferral of this item to at the
Staff.
chairs.
Staff present the agenda to me to talk about approval of. So it's not like I give you a list of these are things I want on the agenda. That's never happened.
And it was directed at last meeting that it come back at this meeting. I'm wondering why it didn't.
So that was
It's not
direction
on
to
the
staff.
line.
Well,
Move
often,
deferral of the whole issue to the next meeting.
if it's not on the agenda, we didn't have time to produce it on the agenda.
Yeah.
I'm not certain it wasn't a time-sensitive issue. Just because there's a resolution to defer or bring it back doesn't mean we have the resources to bring it to the next meeting. So if it's not on this meeting, we didn't have time to do it.
Yeah,
I'm not sure why
Okay.
it's critical. I'm not sure why it's so critical that we have to deal with this item today.
If I may, Mr. CAO, the reason it was critical was because it was included in a section of our agenda that didn't pass. So now it's not critical. The only thing that's critical is that we don't spend any more money on it and we don't do any more work on it. So as long as staff are clear on that, it can sit for a couple of months. I don't care. Brenda?
I think we should just defer it to a future meeting, and at which point the chair could bring back a recommendation about how much money should be returned to the UBCM and what should be done from there. Because if we did spend 30,000 on this already, or, you know, that 50,000, well, that's been spent, and it was in good faith that we did the plan. And my previous comments, just delete them. But we should send back any excess money we're not using on it if we're just stopping the plan. But leave it up to you to put it on the next agenda with a recommendation, because it's your area.
Okay, I would like to see it on a future agenda. If you could
Yes,
please
that's
note
my
that.
motion, a future agenda. Yeah. Need
Okay,
a
is there a
second?
seconder?
Yeah, second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Any discussion? Anyone opposed? Will show up on another agenda somewhere down the road. Okay.
Move termination.
There was another. Okay, just wanted to clear something up. Well, there was a comment by Dave at an earlier meeting about having a meeting about relationships or operations or whatever. There was discussion today by a director, Nova, that we needed to have some sort of a discussion about that same topic. Do we need to think about setting a meeting in conjunction with staff, talk about a date, to set a meeting to actually talk about relationships and procedures and that sort of thing? Is that something that we would have to just say staff direction? We would like to do that. I'm asking a question.
If I could speak, Mr. Chair. Yeah,
Gerald.
for Area A, I have absolutely no need for a meeting of that nature. I think my communication with the staff is excellent, and I have no problems.
Okay,
We do have a procedures bylaw and a code of conduct, Mr. Chair, as well. So if you're thinking about delving into that, that would be a board item.
okay, it would be a board item. It would not be a discussion at EA with a recommendation to the board.
Well, I suppose if you wanted to, I mean, you're the chair. You can put whatever agenda item you want on there.
Okay, we'll just leave it for now and move to that most important item, termination.
So moved. Second,
Anyone opposed? We're terminated, and we'll see you in an
12:30.
hour.
Okay.
Okay,
see you later.
thank you very much, everybody, for your patience.